All right. Good evening, everyone. Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. I hope everyone is doing well this evening and excited to talk to you a little bit about the mid-season slump and how to make sure you avoid it, what it looks like, the signs, and the strategies you can take to make sure that you're safe as you come to the rest of your season. Some of the reasons why we want to actually do that, which is really, really important. All right. So I'm just downloading my presentation right now. I hope everyone's doing really well. As you participate this evening, there's like a chat button on the side where you can go ahead and put comments up there for me to dial in on and answer as you go forward. So don't hesitate to drop some notes in there as you see fit as we go through this process. All right, I will periodically be taking a drink of some tea here. Also need to keep myself critically hydrated as we go through this, all right? Let me get my presentation ready here so we can go forward. I'm very excited to give you this presentation. All right, let's see here. Do this. All right. Almost ready. Present. Go, gonna upload this file. Oh, hold on, let's do a screen then. All right, we'll do this. And we'll hide the sidebar. Let's take a look at this bad boy. All right, there we go. Awesome. Very cool. Fighting the mid-season slump. There we go. Super handsome me. Okay, so we're going to dive into this presentation tonight. This presentation, just for context, came out of the work doing inside Endurance Nation, working with athletes, people on the team who are struggling with this period of time with a break in their normal year. What this means is essentially we have a plan. Inside Endurance Nation, we create this annual plan for you. Somewhere along the year, things go wrong as they are, right? So you just imagine that we were getting in a car, we were going to plan a trip across country, somewhere between here and the middle of the country, something's going to go wrong. We're going to run out of gas, we're going to run out of money, we make a mistake, we wake up too late, we get stuck in traffic, something goes wrong with the car, who knows what could possibly happen, all sorts of things could happen. As a result, we have to adapt and evolve. And a large part of what we do inside Endurance Nation is help our athletes get better at adapting and evolving. And we do this through educational seminars like this, and also providing resources, coaching, community, etc. as we go through this process, okay? So let's dive into the presentation here, and I'll make sure we're humming along. Okay, so great. So first up, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to actually build a season. And the goal here when we build a season is to get rid of some of the problems that we have and create a season that fits the criteria you see listed here. We're looking for a season that's really sort of responsive to you. It eliminates the problems that lie ahead, almost planning, right? Knowing if you think there's going to be traffic through the city, you budget your time accordingly. So even if you were to hit traffic, it's not a problem. If you don't hit traffic, you're good, right? So you'd adjust with that car trip analogy. Ideally, it helps you sustain your progress. And we'll talk a little bit about the value of compounding your fitness over time within a season and between seasons as well. And we'll talk a little bit about what it means to sort of focus on your positioning. This is really important because I'm going to cover today a concept of thinking like a professional and thinking like an amateur. And although many of us desire to emulate professionals, most of us are amateurs in terms of our competition level. We need to strategize accordingly as well. And positioning is a large part of that. If we can put ourselves in the right position, we can be successful from the outset and even over the long term, but it depends on where we position ourselves, right? And then ultimately, it helps you achieve your race day goals. Remember, we don't measure a year in workouts. We don't measure a year in training sessions or race simulations. We manage them in races. We have medals are memories. Those memories are what define your year. So when it comes to it, when push comes to shove, we want to be able to put together a good race. And all of that is not just contingent upon your genetics or how strong you are or just what the optimal conditions are for the day. It's really a function of how your training has prepared you to be excellent. And that's not just putting in the work. It's also allowing opportunities for rest and giving you an opportunity to avoid what we're going to talk about today, was this mid-season stuff. Inside Endurance Nation, we have an ESR, also sometimes known as the TSR, and that is our roadmap, okay? That roadmap essentially is what we do to create for each one of our athletes. And this roadmap is what they follow across the course of their season. So we start off with re-entry, which is restarting after either time off, injury, or from a new season. And that takes anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks, depending on where your fitness level is and how far we have to go to get you back. Okay, super important. Okay? Next up, we have the ramp. And in this period of time, this is where we're building our fitness. Just like it sounds like, it's a ramp. And this is the time during which we're actually adding stress to your system and building fitness for you to get ready for your season. Next up, we have race or epic. The race or epic portion, that's usually sort of like a 2-week peak or something big. It involves sometimes like a little taper into the session, or it could be a whole block, like a week or a week and a half of camp, whatever it may be. But you've got these blocks of epic in there. And last but not least, we have some recovery. Let me think about recovering yourself. So we work from re-entry to ramp to race to recover, okay? Or to ramp to epic to recover, okay? And the key components here that I want you to recognize aren't necessarily the race epic. People say race for just 2 weeks a year. No, it's a cycle that we'll go through where we race and recover. Sometimes we'll do re-entry in the middle of the year. Sometimes we'll go into ramping as well. But the general components are outlined here. And this is really important when you think about a season, because these are the critical components that people will often overlook. The thing that people don't think about, they don't think about re-entry at all. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm fine, right? They just get to work, right? And what they don't think about as well, they don't think about the recovery period. And most people don't build recovery periods into their year. Think about it. When you load a training plan, or you're trying to get from A to B, you're really focused on the work required to get from A to B. You're not focused on the time that you need to rest in that space. You're not focused on the time you need to recover after once you've gotten there. You're not focused on where do you need to be when you start that journey. You're just really focused on that next phase of the journey, right? Which is really myopic and is part of what sets people up for failure when they get into the real season. So I'm going to talk about a success factor, someone who's an outlier, one of my favorite athletes in the Ironman scene. So I'm already giving some away. Here he is. Looks like an ordinary guy, right? The only thing that sort of gives him away, these bracelets. He's got some bracelets on his arms right here, right? So he's not your typical athlete. When we think about Ironman athletes, he's not covered in muscle. He's not walking around with a shirt off, not a tattoo in sight. I mean, honestly, how could this person even be a professional triathlete just looking like an ordinary human being, right? Well, we'll try another clip. How about this? Anybody recognize him now? You know, kind of a giveaway. You can see some of the sponsors here are not U.S. sponsors or European sponsors. So a little bit different. And I met this man. His name's Peter. I met Peter in Lake Placid because Peter had done Coeur d'Alene that year when I was supporting the team. And then he had done Lake Placid where I saw him there. And then later on, I saw him again in, I want to say, late August in Louisville as well. And I came to recognize the fact that this smiling guy, because he smiles when he races and he smiles when he's not racing, was doing tons of races a year. Like race. He'd come over from Europe, from Czechoslovakia, and he would race here in the U.S. throughout the year. And then, go back home, go to Kona, go back home and spend time. Actually, spend time training, in the off season and winter time at home. And then he would come to the U.S. and race and put in his time. I just give you a sense of just how much Peter Fabricek raced. I'm going to leave this slide up for a minute while you take a look at all of his palmares and all the things he's done. The information over here is just staggering. In fact, you may want to just hit pause on the presentation to see. Those are his kids now. He's just a little bit older than I am. But he's got some incredible records up here that are things to think about, right? That are just worth, kind of checking out as you see what he's been up to. So he's done 230 Ironman races. He's won 3 X-Tri races, right? He's done 81 top 10 in official Ironman races. He just was the double Ironman world champion here in the States. He's done the North Pole Marathon and he's won it. He won Ultraman Florida once. He was 3rd place at Ultraman World Championships. Good God. He's the winner of some Mountain Challenge Ultra Marathon series in 2013. Sounds super easy. He's an Antarctic Ice Marathon 100K winner and course record holder in 2013. Freezing, hot, cold, hilly, pace over time, whatever it is. Peter was racing. And the reason why Peter was racing so much was because that's how the system worked. Like back in the day, long before many of you were doing Ironman races, the point system for pros really didn't exist. And instead, you just had to be in the top 3 to get a spot. And so what that meant was you had to come over to the States or be in the States, and you just had to race a lot. because you just didn't know which race was going to hit, who was going to show up, what they were going to do on the day, and what it would look like. So it wasn't about showing up and earning points and 3/5 and a second gets you to Kona. It was like you had to be top 3. So you just kind of hope the competition blew up. And the races were very different back then. So people would really attack each other on the bike, trying to gain a gap so that folks couldn't chase them down on the run. And if you really were in trouble on the run and you knew you weren't going to make it up, people would just jog it in. They just walk. There were races in Lake Placid where there were female pros and male pros just walking and talking. They'd get like 5th place, but they did like a 4.5-hour marathon. No one else was out there. No one else was doing it because the criteria was different. The incentives were off. And as a result, it was sort of a battle of attrition, not just in the race itself, but also across the course of the season. Now, the point system has dynamically changed that. But in reality, what Peter did essentially was he built a season where he would get fit at home. He'd build this engine, come over to the States, and he would basically race and recover all year long. And he used the race and recovery methodology portions of the season, here the race and epic and recover, to maintain a high level of fitness, but not over fatigue himself until he went back home at the end of the year. If he was lucky enough, he'd be at Kona or some championship race in the fall. But this is essentially what his structure looked like. I want to share it with you because for most of us, our season, our data for across the season does not look like this. Our typical build for the season typically has one ramp. It's got one ramp to one race. We race and then we recover, we're done. So most people have like a peak, it's done and it's done, right? Kind of just like a little bump and it's done. And actually, the best athletes and the most strategic athletes actually do a really good job of building fitness and then maintaining time in that zip code, essentially, across the course of the season. And how you do that is effectively how you manage this mid-season slump. Okay, mid-season slump. Okay, with that, time for a little sip here. Let's switch gears for a second. Now that you met Peter, I want you to meet the second best idea of this presentation, which is compound fitness, or in this case, we'll use compound interest as an example. Einstein calls it the 8th wonder of the world. He also said, those who understand it get paid by it. Those who don't pay for it. Compound interest is how, over time, simple, consistent amounts of investments can add up and create incredible wealth. You can see the difference here in terms of a compound effect over time in the orange line and just simple interest going forward here. And what we're trying to do with our fitness is to create those same sets of results for you on the compounding side. And if we can compound your fitness correctly, what we're looking at here is their days become weeks, weeks become months. Those months, they turn into seasons, and those seasons become effectively your endurance career. And so when you do it right, when you avoid the breaks, when you avoid the intermittency of what it means to take lots of time off, to get injured, to overtrain, to have a slump, to have a problem, you actually can build fitness over is that you actually, as you get fitter and stronger and smarter and begin to know your body better, you actually have to do effectively less work, right? You have to ramp your fitness up at the beginning of the year, but then maintaining your fitness at that high level is a game. It's playing a game of doing a little bit of work, doing some recovery, racing, recovering, and managing that strategy. This is how athletes can stack multiple races together. Like in Endurance Nation, we have the 4-week break between 2 Ironman races is the protocol. Or I've done 3 Ironman races in 6 weeks, including, qualifying for Kona in the future, racing Kona here, and then going ahead and qualifying again after racing Kona for the future year, right? So you can kind of put it together. You can like do a regular Ironman World Championships, and then qualify again in a 6 weeks window. 6 weeks, 3 Ironman races, lots of work, but totally doable if you're managing the stress appropriately. Okay, so when we're thinking about your season, I want you to keep this chart in mind, because this is our ultimate goal. Your goal isn't just to get to your race. Your goal is to have this race be part of a data set that is actually leading you to get stronger and fitter over time. No one season is worth risking all of your seasons. In other words, right? No one race, no one workout. There's no reason why you should be running 5 hours in preparation for an Ironman, for example, if it's going to blow you up. No reason for you to go out and ride 24 hours if you're training for a 10-hour race just as an over distancing. If it's going to destroy you and really set you back, it's totally not worth it. Okay. So what's the delta here between the two trajectories? I mean, think about it from a training perspective. The interruptions that take your compound fitness and turn it into simple, ordinary fitness, overtraining, right? Just overreaching, doing too much, getting carried away, especially when you get back into the body of your training, not giving yourself enough time to rest. Excessive fatigue, similar to overtraining. In this case, excessive fatigue manifests itself like emotionally and mentally, not just physically. So excessive fatigue really gets to the place where you have trouble getting out of bed, right? Like you're starting to feel a little depressed. You're being held down, suppressed, like emotions, hormones, sex drive, all of that gets suppressed during this period of time because you've really worked yourself into a really tough spot. Biomechanical or injury-related setbacks. This is a classic one. As we start to overtrain and the fatigue sets in and we're not managing the rest recovery cycle, what happens is you actually start to perform worse. Like you're at a higher risk of injury when you're running under extreme fatigue. Your form breaks down. Your foot strike is worse. Your ability to stay in the aero bars is compromised on the tri-bike, for example, because you're just losing that functional strength because you're so fatigued positionally. Your hamstrings are fighting against your lower back. They're in a fight with each other. They're arguing. And as a result, you're suffering and feeling that pain. A really bad place to be. And once you get to the place through pushing through that work, being tough, is that you end up in a place where you're actually having to take significant time off to recover, heal, and sometimes even rebuild those muscle groups. If it happens, it happens, right? But if we can be strategic, we can plan ahead, we can avoid that altogether. And the worst, I think, honestly, the worst possible outcome here is you just lose your love for the game, right? You're not into it anymore. Your heart's not into it. You just don't want to do it. You're just out of the mix. The workouts are there. The long sessions on the weekend with your friends are there. The race is coming up. And you're just not into it because you've lost the mojo. You lost the streak of your workouts. You're not seeing the results that you want to see. And as a result of all that, you're just feeling it and it's just not working for you, right? So what are some of the symptoms that you're heading into this situation? What are some of the warning signs or the red flags that you need to be aware of as you are going through your year? And these are the signs that will help you know when you need to tap the brakes, okay? So we'll go through them here just really quickly. I'll pull out a few for highlights. These are some key ones for me. Difficulty sleeping. Super early warning sign for me. The difficulty sleeping isn't difficulty falling asleep. It's the restlessness when I'm sleeping and also just getting super hot. Like metabolically, I just get super hot at night when I'm doing a lot of training. And that's a red flag for me that I'm pushing my physical limits because my body is still processing and doing work even when I'm at full rest in the evening. The plateaued progress, this is a pretty easy one. That's where you're just not seeing numbers change. You're running week after week, riding week after week, hitting your intervals, doing your work, but you're not getting any stronger despite the work. And in fact, sometimes you'll even see some dips down, right? Where you're sort of like actually almost, it seems like you're getting less strong for the same amount of work, and it's confusing. I don't mean that your test goes from 200 watts to 195 watts and you're like, I must be overtrained. I mean, like you're out doing your lone bike ride or your lone run or your tempo run, and you're in your fourth or fifth week. And the first week you ran it at 9-minute miles, and the second week you ran it at like 850 minute per mile, and the third week you ran it at like 848. That's great. And the fourth week now you're back up at like 858. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm not staying stronger. I'm actually losing speed over the course of this run. And a significant block, not just 1 mile, but a significant block enough to stand out. So you're kind of plateauing a little bit. Next one, this is a really easy tell from one of our athletes. The emotional instability. You just lose your temper. You get frustrated. That same type of stress that may affect you at work or in a dynamic situation at home also manifests itself with your training. You're just run down. You're a little short with yourself. You're frustrated with what's happening. You're not seeing the numbers that you want on the dial, and it's not working for you. It's very easy to fall into this emotional instability, just kind of lash out, be grumpy even sometimes. And so your friends and family might actually notice this one first before you even do. Elevated RPE, this is super important. You're going out doing your steady state ride. You're like, I'm going to ride in zone 1, so you're riding in zone 1. This is the case where you're sort of checking your heart rate monitor, checking your power meter, not checking the tire. You're looking at it being like, is this for real? It feels like zone 3 right now. It's supposed to be zone 2, but it feels like zone 3. What's going on? Are my zones off? Like, what's happening? And so when you feel that excessive fatigue, another clear sign that whatever you're doing during the week or whatever you've been doing over the course of a few weeks has manifested itself to a place where right now, this Saturday, this Sunday, this Friday, whatever it may be, you just don't have the juice. Your fatigue is real there. And as a result, you've got to be careful. You'll notice it also with an erratic morning heart rate or disrupted heart rate variability. I'll put these two sort of side by side. Your typical morning metrics that you'll look at, say you're sort of in a normal window, like 45 to 50 beats per minute or 52 beats per minute. And all of a sudden you're starting to notice those numbers are creeping up. Or maybe it's 54 one day and then 46 the next day and then 53. You see a lot more variability in these numbers than you normally would. That oscillation, that situation, and the deviation in those lines is really a sign that your body's trying to fight to get back to normal, to homeostasis, and it's having a tough time. because of the fatigue you're in. So those are also warning signs. Not that a 54 or 46 is good or bad, but the fact that you have a baseline trajectory for these numbers, and now you're outside the lines, you're coloring outside the lines, you're ruining the picture with your coloring. What are you doing? Put the crayon down. All of that shows up as a problem for you. We see decreased workout performance. I mentioned this in terms of the plateaued progress, but in this here specifically, what I'm talking about is that you just can't put the workouts together, right? So if you've got a brick workout like a bike run or a swim bike or some combination, or you're putting together like a Tuesday Thursday session, you're having a tough time just sort of putting those whole workouts together. You need to shut it down in the middle. So it's not even that you can't hit your numbers. You're doing the workouts, but in this case, the numbers, you need to stop. You're like, I need to add more rest in here. I can't keep up this effort. I was doing 4 by 5 minutes last week. This week I'm on my 3rd, 5th minute, and I need to take a break. I need to add extra rest in here. That's that decreased workout performance I'm talking about. Yeah, this lethargy, low motivation. I touched on this earlier, but again, this is one of those sort of early insidious signs, and you've got a long workout on the weekend or a quality session during the week, and you're dreading it. You're just really dreading it. And sometimes some people just dread certain sessions. I get that. Like swim sessions for me, like hard swim sessions, no thank you. Super dread. But if you have a workout that you normally love and now all of a sudden you're not looking forward to it, that's a sign. Don't ignore that sign. There's something coming for you. That's like a tick in the note box to be like, I got to check on this on the weekend, see if I bounce back, see if I feel better about next week. If it's 2 weeks in a row and you're missing that mojo, it's time to go back and take a look at the structure every week. More on that later. And then last but not least, just increase susceptibility to illness and injury. So you'll start to notice that like your legs are aching a bit more, your joints might be aching a bit more. This may be more of a manifestation of an extreme ramp rate, but regardless, it's a sign that you are more susceptible to accruing damage, accruing fatigue. Ironically, as the fatigue sets in, as your biomechanics break down, you actually start to accumulate even more fatigue rapidly with poor technique and less time to recover. It begins to exponentially get out of control, which is, again, something that really makes you more susceptible to this injury. We have to be really super careful about it here. All right. Some of the causes, because people always ask, okay, well, I got the signs. Well, what's the cause? And the reason why I want to know the root cause is that once we know what the root cause of the situation is, then we can get back and say, how do I fix this in the course of my season? What are the things I can turn on or turn off to make sure that my season is better? So number one, and this is like, I put this at the top because it's just the number one killer. It's monotony. You've just been doing the same workout plans for the same, year after year. You use your favorite plan every year. You dust it off. Pull out that favorite training plan. Like, I'm going to do this for my marathon again, or do this for my century route again. You do the same thing every year, time and time again. That monotony is like riding into a rut. There's some comfort associated with it because you know what to do, but there's also a real risk in that monotony that you're going to hit yourself. You're going to put yourself into a position where you're going to plateau again. And actually the mental fatigue and the boring element of it sets in sooner than the physical manifestation. And then soon after, you'll have that physical problem. The next piece here, one of the favorites of mine, one of the favorites of my wife, who loves to remind me, I'm getting inadequate sleep, right? So you have your own baseline of what good sleep is versus bad. When you're into heavy training, we recommend that you target 8 hours. You get plus or minus half an hour, somewhere in there is great. But inadequate sleep is one of the top predictors of the mid-season slump and one of the top causes as well. Work-life stressors, without a doubt, massive. I skipped the weather. We'll come back to the weather. Work-life stressors are huge. Most people only look at their training and the impact of their work from training, but in reality, there's all sorts of other factors in your life that affect you. Your work, your relationships, your life at home, financial situation, friends, social commitments, etc. All those elements can be additive and subtractive to where you are, and that sometimes there's a couple of them fall into that negative column, and that can really stress you out, irrespective of your actual training. Training might be great, but if the rest of your life is in a tough spot, that can be really hard. I mentioned, we'll go back to weather instability. Sounds crazy, but if you've got a really bad winter, or you're just having a bad spring, and you just can't get outside, it's, you've been looking towards the finish line to get off the trainer or to get off the treadmill and get outside, and now you don't have it, or you have to go back in and out all the time, that instability can actually be really detrimental to your overall well-being. We don't work well. We have to go back and forth, and we get something outside time, and then we lose it inside time. Outside time, inside time. It becomes a little sort of like evil Pavlovian messing with your reward system, and as a result can really set you off. So weather instability is in fact a factor. Lack of plan flexibility, this leads sort of a little bit to the monotony side, but when I say plan flexibility, I mean that you don't have either power over your training plan, like we talk about inside the team, or you're uncomfortable adjusting your training plan. And as a result, you're just following this plan, like we like to say inside the team, into a brick wall, and you're going to have a problem. The plan itself is not going to adapt. You need to adapt around the constraints of the plan and how you're responding, which is very, very important. So at the end of the day, we always want to encourage you as an athlete to remember you're in control. You're holding the steering wheel. You choose the plan. You choose how you interpret your daily workouts. You've got the numbers and the metrics on your dashboard. Those are the tools you use to make decisions that will help you up for success. Okay. I mentioned earlier, aggressive ramp rates. This is just getting too excited or maybe signing up for a race late, putting yourself in trouble. Poor workout nutrition for sure, especially when we get in season, particularly after we get to that ramp or we're getting that race period. Athletes are, minding body composition. If that bleeds over into the rest of their season, that can be challenging because as the workload goes up, our calories need to go up as well so we can fuel our bodies. And if you're having poor workout nutrition, that just means you're finishing all of these long sessions in this energy deficit. Over time, even though you are eating after your sessions, perhaps even healthily, despite what you're doing during the workouts, you're going to end up in an energy deficit. That energy deficit becomes a real problem later as you try to figure out, how do I start to put together good workouts when every time you start for a workout, when you used to have glycogen to get you to 2 hours, now it's only an hour and a half, and it continues, now it's only an hour, now it's only 40 minutes, and you're still putting up the same 3.5 hour workout. That means more time and more stress on your body from a fueling perspective. And if you've got a poor fueling plan in place, it means that you're really going to be in trouble long term. Okay. Another option here, the minimal reentry window. This means that you just didn't take the time to get back into it. You just went right to it. You were like, oh, my race is in 6 weeks. I got to go. And you're in that sort of rush scenario. Think about rushing to the airport to catch a plane. Hurry up, get a taxi. Hurry up, jump on a train. That's when you jump on the wrong train. That's when you get out of the taxi at the wrong terminal. That's when you get on a taxi, leave your iPhone behind. Like whatever it may be, like that stress does not bring more value to your racing experience. In fact, it sets you back. And so understanding what your season parameters look like so you can start appropriately, get that reentry work in, so important. And last but not least, there's a sort of social mechanism, whether it's Strava or with your teammates, this concept of like, hey, I got to keep this streak alive, or I got to make the numbers go up. I got to get faster and better every time. You can't be a hero in every session, and no individual session and no individual discipline, as I mentioned earlier, should be the signal of success for your year. Great races, great performances, great epic experiences, those define your year. Everything else is just a tool to get you to that place. And just like any tool, there's times when you need to pick it up and use it, times when you need to put it down and not use it, use something else. And managing your season and having your flexibility, even inside yourself with your incentives and your motivation, really important. The same thing that motivates you in the beginning of the season might not be the same thing that motivates you later. Not changing those incentives or that alignment can also be a compounding factor for you in terms of trouble. Let's talk a little bit about the different types of people who run into this trouble, because these are my favorite. I always like to come up with a couple options for you. The classic one here is the procrastinator. The procrastinator comes out and says like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll be fine. I need to start training now. I know everyone else is training now. It's January. My race is in July. I'll start in February or March, or maybe April, because by then I can be outside. So I'll wait till April. Well, you've just taken like 3 full months off the calendar of actual training, and that's where things get in trouble, because now you really force yourself in a place where you can't do reentry, and you're gonna have to really hit that ramp rate pretty hard, which again is a massive setup for problems with your season. Next up, faked out fit. Kind of a fan or aligned with the procrastinator. Faked out fit is like, I'm doing great. I remember last time I rode my bike, I was super fast and strong. Of course, the asterisk on that statement is the last time you rode your bike and were super fast and strong was like 4 months ago. You're no longer super fast and strong. You're gonna have to build that back. And the folks who deceive themselves and think I'm fit enough and I'll be fine, they actually set themselves up for a really tough spot in the season, because that reconciliation will eventually happen. They'll push the numbers until they realize they can't keep pushing those numbers over time. Their body will push back. Typically, there's some sort of overuse injury, problem, pushback, and then there's adaptation, and then there's recalibration to get back. Well, all of that costs you time to get ready for your race. And again, that puts you in the same position as a procrastinator, where now you're trying to cram stuff into time. When we're cramming, we're just not at our best from a decision-making perspective or from a fitness accumulation perspective. Next up, we have the tortured tortoise. This is super fun. The tortured tortoise, this is like the opposite of the last two I talked about. The tortured tortoise signs up for a race next year and starts training that same day for that race next year. This athlete has a huge training plan. They've got like a horizon's worth of workouts. They know everything they're doing for the next 727 days, and they're going to follow it, and they're going to go through it. And that is what success is, which is just following this plan and doing all of this work. Again, the very minimalist ESR structure that I showed you earlier allows you to be flexible in your season. We have more adaptations inside the team in terms of specificity, swim camp, other modalities to help you stay focused and engaged without that long-term 24-week build-up to your race or 32-week build-up to a race. No one should be building 32 weeks to a race. Like, that's a jail sentence as far as I'm concerned. That's a problem. So don't be a tortoise. And by tortoise, not to say that being deliberate is a problem, but really being pedantic and not being dynamic with your training structure. Again, from a positioning perspective, like I talked about at the beginning, this tortoise option puts you in a really bad position long-term. Then last but not least, the copycat. These are my favorite. These are the athletes who just do whatever someone else is doing for the workouts. They show up and they say, "Oh, are you riding today as well? What are you doing?" They tell me you're doing. So I'm just going to jump in with you. Or like, "Oh, what are you? I saw you're going to the track. I'll come on over. What are we running today? 10 by 800 sounds great. I'll do that. And they're very happy to be social. They're very happy to mirror what someone else is doing, but they're not actually creating a cohesive buildup to their race. Of course, I'm all about being social. There's nothing wrong with having a couple sessions that either dovetail or you run your own workout at the track while your friend runs another workout, but you're both at the track, catching up with each other, etc. That works. But like literally copy pasting in from individuals, particularly different differentials, different individuals. Like, hey, I'm going to swim with Jane on Fridays, but I'm going to bike with Bob on Saturday. I'm going to run with Sue on Sundays. And they're all different athletes, all different races, all different goals. That really, again, keeps you fit, keeps you active, really high index on the social scale, very low index on the actual evolution of your performance scale because you're just following everyone else's lead, okay? I want to give you an example or a visual of the mid-season slump because sometimes when we're talking about it with bullets, it's hard to tell. But this is my build-up from 2022 into 2023 where I did, for race perspective, I did Ironman Leadville. And then I went ahead and did, I'll make sure I'm good here. Good, I'm good. All right, so I did Ironman. I did Leadville 100 in August here, and then right after that I did Steamboat. So 2 big races here, sort of in this August timeframe. How did I handle these big races? What did I do? Okay, and what does it look like? And so things started off really well. End of the year 2022, I was building a little fitness here, like doing a small block to kind of pull things up. Next block was this sort of into the winter block. This is where I was really trying to be deliberate with my aerobic base building and say, all right, I'm going to do some good work here and kind of build myself up to be ready for a solid sustained winter. So you can tell winter sustained, not so much. I actually got a little carried away here. My fitness here, as I was hitting December, was as high as it was mid-season. So that's a red flag for me now in retrospect. So needless to say, the sort of December to mid-February Valentine's Day sort of option here, that block didn't really work out for me. Like I was like detraining a little bit, and despite the work I did and the rest I had to take in between it just wasn't successful for me. And that put me in a position where I had another ramp period here to get ready. I was going to Mallorca for my cycling camp, and from there to Tenerife for a big block as well. And so I was excited to get ready for this training, but I was concerned about it. So I was like, oh, I've got to do some more training, get myself back up. As a reminder, I was, only just back kind of where I was fitness-wise in October when I started the whole process. So instead of ramping from A to B, like I did in this gradual set, I ramped from like, sort of like A+ to like C, like B+ to C, a little higher. Here, even steeper ramp, more aggressive in this block of time, right? And I rested, but did I rest enough? The answer is no, because I was resting at levels that were even higher than my peak levels had been all year. So technically, my friends, that's not rest, okay? Then comes the middle of the year. I do Mallorca, I put in 700 miles in a week, and I do another big race at the end in Tenerife, and I'm suffering here. Like not only did I do a 10-hour race in Mallorca, I did like a 10-hour race in Tenerife, and I came home from it, and I was just explodified and in pieces. But I knew that I had races in August, so I was like, oh my God, how do I keep this going? And so I really fought. I fought for about 5 weeks, I think, inside here, even 6 weeks, trying to do work, trying to recover. But the net is that no matter what I was doing for work, I would instantly lose fitness as well. And the RPE in this section was crazy hard. I'll just zoom in on it for you for a second. The RPE was off the charts. My back was hurting. I was clearly overtrained from a journal perspective. When I go back and look, I wasn't taking enough rest. Even after doing little surges of work like here, I wasn't resting long enough. I was resting like super short and then getting back to work again. I was trying to force the square peg into the round hole, and I really ran into trouble. In fact, I wasn't happy with my training, and I felt like, I'll tell you mentally what was going through my mind. I felt like at this period of time right here, kind of heading into July, I was like 8 weeks out from Leadville, 6 weeks out from Leadville, and I was like, I got to get after this bad boy. I'm in trouble. And so I started to try training again, and that's where I was just done. Right by the end of July, I was about 4 to 5 weeks out from my 2 big races. They were 7 days apart, Leadville and Steamboat, and I was devastated. Like I just couldn't train anymore. And I had to take damage control steps. And that's what you see here is this big drop where I took a ton of time off and I did a little bit of work. I peaked up for Leadville. I took a little bit of a break, and then I peaked up again for Steamboat as well. And actually, it's this period of my season, this detraining period right here, it looks like this. Just kind of pull it up here. This detraining period is what really saved my season. And in fact, all of the work that I'd done to get ready for it, actually, even including this sort of Batman double peak here, almost destroyed my season. In fact, I had to do so much disaster control that I was really worried. And if you zoom out again and take a look at my year, even coming out of that and getting into this season and building again, you can see that I've had a tough time struggling and keeping myself healthy, getting back on track. You could argue, rightfully so, that this work here in the body of the season, which is predominantly cycling, some of my highest CTL numbers, chronic training load numbers, and just on the bike alone, really set me back long term. Okay. Now, of course, I had success. I went sub 9 on a perfect day in Leadville on an incredible bike with incredible guidance from my teammates. I was very fortunate, but it was by the hair on my chinny chin chin. And even within the race, if you read my race report, you'll see that it wasn't a given by any means. So what's the problem here? Well, I've got a pro mindset like Peter, and I've got my amateur reality that I need to be thinking about. So in Peter's training, he's thinking about peak speed. How fast can he go? For me as an amateur, I just want to not slow down. Like I'm gonna let my other people blow up. I'm gonna not slow down as an amateur. For Peter, he's trying to set new human limits, put these races together, race in Antarctica, race down under. God knows the guy raced everywhere. He's trying to push his limits. For me, I'm trying to limit what I push. I'm trying to reduce human error in my situation. I want to reduce the downtime, which is what leads to success and allows me to compound, right? He's trying to win. I'm just trying not to lose. I'm just trying to stay on course in a good place. By not slowing down, by not losing, I am by default winning against most of the other amateurs that I compete with. Thank goodness I don't compete with Peter. But I put these two realities here so you understand that as we start making decisions, it's not about optimal human performance. We are not in that zip code, my friends. We can buy products, services, equipment, etc., that make us feel that way. But at the end of the day, we live in an amateur reality, no matter how strong you are. Even in the top 10% of a race, there's still 9 percentage points like most that are between us and the champion. And that delta often translates into hours, multiple, 90 minutes, 100 minutes, 120 minutes between those two realities, right? Okay, so if you find yourself in this position, we're in this mid-season slump, I've got a 4-step solution for you that I think is really helpful to kind of get you back. Got it highlighted here, and we're going to break it down, okay? And it's important that you understand the 4 different phases that you go through because they're important for you not only to exit the stress that you're feeling right now, and ideally, you would actually respond really quickly to this because you're not in too deep of a hole, but also it gives you an opportunity to learn more about what makes you tick in terms of like a positive way and what sets you back, like the negative tick and the negative way, so we can adjust and ultimately build those solutions into your training plan going forward so we avoid these altogether. So first up, step 1, we rest hard, we eat clean, and we regroup. So if you're like, I probably need 2 days off, double it. If you think 2, give yourself 4 because you're always going to hedge on those days off. Endurance athletes are horrible. So if you think you need a week, give yourself 2 weeks. I'm not saying shut it all down, but I'm saying be really smart in this 2-week window. So you're going to commit to 8+ hours of sleep. If you can't do it at first, just make sure you're cutting the sugar and caffeine out of your system late in the second half of the day. Get into bed, turn off the devices, just read a book. Eventually you'll fall asleep. And you have to train your body to fall asleep because you're typically overstimulated in this overtrained state. And as a result, you're just sort of ramped up on edge, etc. So you got to really dial it back from the unnecessary calories and all the sugars and stuff you've been putting in your system to compensate for the fatigue that you have. And ultimately, you're trying to lock in this rest period across all aspects of your life. So it doesn't do you a lot of good if you dial down the workouts, but work is still a 10 out of 10 in terms of stress, right? Or other relationships are, or other situations and commitments. If you're being serious and true to your body and you want the best performance, whether it's, on the bike, on the run, at the office, at the dinner table, a Sunday at church, like whatever your optimal desired position is, then we have to make sure that we're doing our best to eliminate all of those stressors. And this is crunch time is a great time to make decisions, because when everything's fine, don't worry about it. Add another one. Who cares? Let's do another one. That's fine. But ultimately, over time, when you get to a place where adding more and more and more is just kind of broken things for you, this broken period is the number one time to pull stuff off your plate. Just take it off. You are broken. It's easy to do. You know it. Your friends and family, the ones who love you know, and the ones who are close to you know. Use this time to push stuff off the plate. Not saying you can't bring it back, but bring it back in a more incremental way. Okay, so double the time you think you need off. Commit to that sleep protocol, even if it means adding a nap during the day. Eliminate the dirty food from your routine to kind of clean things up from a rest recovery cycle, and then do your best to improve all aspects of your life in terms of recovery. Next up, adjust your load structure. What I mean by this is different sport modalities bring different load to you. And for different people, some workouts are more costly. So for some people, a swim is really easy. They're a great swimmer and they just float in the water, and it's like zero TSS, zero training stress. For other people, swimming in the water, the legs are dragging, they're fighting it, they feel like it's borderline drowning, tons of stress for them, right? We go for a 10-mile run. You run 6-minute miles, you're done in an hour. I run 10-minute miles, I'm done in an hour 40. Same 10-mile run, I have 40 more minutes of training stress on my body, the duration piece of time, than you have on yours. You're running faster, you think you'd be accumulating more stress, but it's really the duration factor that crushes me. And as a result, you have to be really smart when we make these decisions that we're eliminating the most costly training you have. So whatever that costly training is that's hurting you, if it's the run, if it's hard bikes, again, if it's the swim session or whatever your modality may be, we're going to eliminate that or reduce it. So if the run or long run's a problem, we take those long runs off the schedule, we replace it with a non-weight bearing aerobic exercise piece. Like, let's get the really costly stuff off the table, the worst possible things to get you better. If this were a load or something you were carrying, we take the heaviest thing from you so you can make sure you can manage with what you have and really significantly reduce what you have, right? Okay. As we make these decisions, we want to maintain frequency first and duration second. So if you've got 6 days of workout, ideally you still keep 6 days of workout. We maintain that frequency of sessions, but what we do is we're willing to dial down that duration to keep the frequency. So if I still want to do 6 days of workouts, but you were doing 90 minutes every day and you're in this fatigue state, maybe we take those 90 minutes daily down to 60. So we're getting rid of 3 hours, 6 by 30 minutes. But we're keeping the frequency and your body's sort of in that same zone. We've really dialed things back. Great. If we're keeping the frequency and dialing it down doesn't help you, then start to take that duration down as well, right? And say, you know what, I'm really gonna drive this down and say, I'm gonna make it 30 minutes, right? So we're not maintaining it as much, right? We just kind of really dial down and give yourself more room. And you'll know over time as you move into this restorative phase that maybe you're not taking enough off the plate, right? Another way you can manage the load structure is to just drop by one zone. Instead of doing zone 5 intervals, do zone 4. Instead of zone 4, do zone 3. Instead of zone 3, do zone 2. Instead of zone 2, zone 1. And just do the math inside your head as you look at the workouts for this block of time, a week, 5 days, 7 days, 9 days, whatever it may be for you, to just really dial things back. Again, you're staying active, you're staying consistent, you're taking care of your body, stretching, maybe some napping, maybe a massage if you're fortunate enough to have the means, someone good near you to do that and you have the time. Otherwise, we're going to dial these zones back again to create more windows for recovery here by reducing the intensity of those quality sessions as a function of reducing the load structure. And all the time, all the while here, we're really closely monitoring how you're performing. Ideally, we start to see some good sleep. We start to feel better. If you become more and more motivated, you want to get back after it, that's okay. Don't do it right away. Like, hold on to that feeling. Take a little bit longer before we go rushing back to your training. That's a good sign. It means that you're walking the right path. Okay. Then we think about adjusting your training week, right? So we did the early triage. Then we said we're going to remove the training load. The next up, we're going to adjust our training week. In this case, really have to think about what's more important to you, the weekdays or the weekends, or inversely, what's more costly to you, the weekends or the weekdays, and then decide how we want to adjust. If you're training in the last couple of weeks to your big race, maybe we want to prioritize those long weekends, and the weekdays we can do whatever we can to bridge every Saturday and Sunday to connect. I want to connect a Sunday to a Saturday, Sunday, and then Sunday to the next Saturday is what I'm trying to connect with those 5 days. In other cases, the weekends and the long sessions might be what's stressing you out with your other commitments. In that case, we need to focus on Monday through Friday, some flavor thereof, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the other days really dial down in terms of focus. If that's the case, that's fine, but really take a good hard look at adjusting that week to make sure you set yourself up for success. What's the real pinch point for you? How do we improve it? Next up, you want to build in the micro rest blocks. And if not rest blocks, rest hours. So, what a lot of people run into in season is that when they get to Sunday, they put in a ton of work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, maybe it's just like a light aerobic day, but it's not enough time to recover. They're not done with the workout on Sunday till 4 p.m. and just resting for 24 hours really doesn't get them until the next day or 36 hours. It's not enough time. So maybe you need to actually do really hard rest on Sunday. So, really putting in that easy day, off day, light walk, whatever it is, no heart rate monitor, whatever it means for you to go easy, putting that in there to rest hard. I'd rather you rest hard and really target a way that allows you to come back and be stronger, because that rest hard allows you to maintain more strength over time than not resting, getting right back at it, and ultimately setting yourself up for that real tough point you get into with the slump, right? The whole time you're making these decisions, you want to prioritize your race day performance. So when you think about the workouts, which sessions are going to help you be successful? If you got a race that requires some short, intense efforts, like more of a mountain bike style, then maybe those midweek efforts matter most. If you're doing a race that's got lots of endurance inside of it, maybe the weekend sessions are actually higher priority workouts for you as you work on race nutrition, race pacing. So again, use that focus on what's going to help me be the best possible for the race. And that's that. And the only answer you can't give here is that it can't be all the things. You can't say I want to include everything because Monday through Sunday perfect is the way that I get ready for my race day performance. That's not going to cut it. Okay. And of course, don't forget, at this point in time, we're eliminating junk mileage. There's a time to add mileage and to build fatigue. When you already have plenty of fatigue, junk miles just something to do because you don't want to do something else, right? You're avoiding something. So let's unavoid that. Let's dial it in. Let's eliminate those junk miles and focus on only what are the things you need to do to maintain your fitness and prepare yourself to be successful on race day. And last but not least, the fourth step here is we plan for the future. Let's talk a little bit about what our personal rule set is. Right? Maybe you had this concept that you would do these 8 weeks of consecutive runs or these big rides on this couple big weekends, or maybe a big weekend or big block. That was your personal goal. Those were your rules. We need to change that rule set. You say, like, I can't do 7 of those weeks in a row successfully. All right, I can't do these 4 days hard in a row anymore. I can't do more than 2 days hard in a row. I need a rest day. Take that lesson. It's not that you have to do less work for next year. We just start off in that smart mode. We do 2 days, for example, a rest day and 2 days. Maybe the next time around in a couple of weeks, we can do 4 days together, or 3 days, 1 day rest and go again. But we can't do all 4 days right away. We know that breaks us. So how do we adapt accordingly, right? Let's also make sure when you plan for your season or plan for the remainder of your season, you actually block out rest periods. After your races, like we saw with Peter in his chart, actually build in some rest factors there. So really build in that rest. Remember, it's not the lifting of the weight that makes you stronger. It's the recovery period after, when your body heals up, the muscle fiber returns and actually gets stronger and then allows you to push more weight. But without that recovery restorative phase, you never get to a place where the strength manifests itself, right? You just continue stacking the fatigue. Another thing we want to make sure of here is that we want to improve our early alert systems. So if it is your mood, really dialing in on that the next time around, like making sure you're asking your significant other, spouse or roommate, hey, am I really sort of off the reservation here? Paying attention to some of those key markers like heart rate variability or RPE issues, or just that sort of feeling of malaise. If you can catch it sooner, you can start making small micro changes as well. Maybe an extra nap, changing your nutrition, being really good for 3-4 days during the week to kind of keep the ship on course so you don't have to take that full down cycle time, which is the interrupter. These interrupter that saves your season is necessary. When you break the glass and pull that switch down, everything stops now as we focus on the recovery. And our job is to make sure we just don't set fire to the kitchen first, right? And then along the way, we just want to capture our personal best solution. So if you find a way out of this, understand what you did, know what you did, what really resonated for you. Was it the rest? Was it the sleep? Was it the nutrition? Was it changing your week? What did you do that made this better? Keep that protocol, save it. So in the future, when you run into trouble again, you have a protocol to start with right away. No stumbling around for a couple of days till you sort it out. You're like, I'm going to use protocol A or protocol 2B, and then get after that and actually use that to manifest faster, rapid recovery so you can be better on track and really avoid all the hiccups. So again, a large part of what we're doing here, sort of on demand in the middle of your season, is building a better endurance season roadmap. So really getting a better sense of like, how do I handle this race epic period here? How do I handle this ramp to be successful? And how much recovery do I need? If you're like Peter, it's possible you can do just one good ramp and then maintain that time and use races strategically across the year. That's great for someone who's busy. If you're not Peter and there's only certain times a year you may race, you may change your structure accordingly. But I will tell you that at a minimum, 4 weeks of reentry training and then 12 weeks of ramping are really critical before you get into the race. And if you're going to do 4, 12, and then right into the race, just know that you're talking about a 4-month block of just going consistently without any rest. So we do recommend some shorter blocks in there, typically every 6 weeks, to kind of get a rest. So if we were stacking these all together and we said, oh, this is 4, 12, and 2, that's 18 weeks. That's 3, at least 2 1-week blocks inside there. So you have 3 functions of 6, 2 1-week blocks in there. So you go 5-1, 5-1, and then you do your last 6 into the race. That would allow you 2 weeks of rest in that cycle. So always factoring in that rest to allow your body to heal as need be. Remember, we're looking for, as an amateur, we're looking to not slow down. We're looking to not break. We're looking to not make the mistakes our competition's making. That's what makes us faster. Okay. All right. I got a few moments here. Got a few questions that are always easy to answer, and I'm happy to do it. So question number 1, how do I know the slump is real? How do I know that I'm really in a tough spot? Do I really need to get out of this? What's the strategy here? Well, it's, you know what? You're kind of looking in the distance when you first see a slump and you're not quite sure. And you can wait, just like a speeding train as you're standing on the tracks. You can wait to see if it's a speeding train. My advice to you, let's step out of those tracks. Let's just take some baby steps right now. So in that scenario, you can still implement, 2 or 3 sort of very light days, particularly coming off of a weekend. This is easy. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It allows Thursday and even Friday to be a bit of re-entry, and you're right back on track. Your Saturday, Sundays continue to be on the path. That's fantastic for your training plan. And we took a good hard look at it. If it didn't turn out to be fatigue in retrospect, just look after it. Worst case scenario, you're just a little more rested for your race, a little more rested for the peak period of your training. No harm, no foul, which is fine. The challenge becomes when we're like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? All the while we're continuing on. We're not doing anything to mitigate the potential risk that we see. We have to be really careful there. The next piece with that question also is, what's the red flag for you? Is it fatigue? Is it nutrition? Is it monotony? Whatever that is, because it's possible that just by addressing 1 or 2 elements of the system, we can prevent that alarm from triggering in a way that can make things better for you. So adding a little bit more rest into your block, maybe changing the modalities a bit, changing the training load structure. So one example that I've done really well with athletes in a 12-week build to a key race is to keep the trajectory going. But after 3 weeks of work, we have another 4th week, but it's not an off week. It's just we really changed the modality. So if you've been cycling hard for 3 weeks, what do we do in that 4th week? We cycle hard like 2 sessions, but the rest of the time is time on your feet or cross training. You're doing a fair amount of time, probably similar commensurate wise in terms of total time, but completely different modalities, which allows you to really rest from the bike, even though we're keeping our training load high. That allows you to be successful long-term with your goal without accumulating all of that individual discipline fatigue, which is what typically really starts to trigger the warning signs in there. So something for you to figure out and think about, right? Okay, another question. How many races is too many races? I saw what you said about Peter. I saw his Palmar race. He's got all these races. Like, can I do 97 races? Well, I'll tell you this. Races are expensive and they're hard to get to, and there's a lot of cost, like social, work-wise, etc., doing the races. That said, having your races bunched in your season is actually really powerful if you're able to do it, because it means you only have to build your fitness once. We can manage this peak level across the top to stay close to your peak performance before we drop down again into some serious recovery. That allows you to get 2 or 3 races. In a typical Ironman season, for example, 4 weeks of reentry, 12 weeks of doing a ramp, and then you've got a race, say. So you got like 16 to 20 weeks in there sort of to the race. And then if you were to recover for 4 weeks, then you'd repeat that whole cycle, and in the course of that, you're talking of 2, maybe you could do 2 Ironman races in a whole year, but they're 22 months apart. And so you've got a race in make it a May, and then you got another race in like November. And then those are just 2 massive seasons, and you're just training all year long. You're training in all sorts of conditions. It's really fatigue. You could instead say, I'm going to extend the ramp on the front end, maybe a little more reentry, or maybe we drop the ramp period and make it a little longer, like 18 weeks, for example, instead of just 12. And then you do 2 races in a 5-week period. In that case, we have 2 races for just 1 ramp period. You got plenty of time to rest and maybe do some fun stuff in the fall. So really thinking about what your goals are. Another way to manifest this from the race perspective is to use shorter races or different races in the earlier part of your season as milestone events for you to prepare, but take some of the pressure off of just training and the monotony of doing things by yourself. So inside Endurance Nation, people will do a half Ironman in the winter training period. People will do half marathon. Do a half Ironman in the middle of their season for an Ironman build, or an Olympic for a half Ironman build. If they're doing like gravel races, they may do shorter, like single day classics, hell of 100 in for like 70 miles in March before they go off and do like, 120 mile or something later in the year. So you can find shorter events that can be part of your stepping stone and replace some of your simulation workouts that allow you to stay successful. Again, not all of us can race, but it's certainly worth trying to put the races together. The key is, and this is important, stacking different races together gets hard. So if you did an Ironman and then you said, I want to do a half Ironman and do it fast, having those close together is hard. Ironically, doing 2 Ironman races in that same window is a little bit easier because you're doing the same type of level of work. There's no differential. When you come off of a big race and then try and do a shorter race and go very faster, that's typically hard for athletes to move the needle from go far to go fast and see those performance gains. You might see a gain later in the season, but in that short window, typically we don't see that turnaround in terms of being able to maintain your speed, but also keep your endurance level high. So you do have to manage your expectations in that period as well. Okay. Last but not least, workout nutrition, which is a great question. I know I touched on this earlier. Yes, without a doubt, poor workout nutrition is something that begins every year in the winter when athletes are training and they're only training for 45 minutes or an hour, and they don't really think about eating or drinking because it's only an hour. So why would I eat or drink? That's your choice. That's fine. For an hour session, you technically don't need to. The problem becomes that you carry that same mindset into your year. The rides go to 90 minutes or 2 hours, and you're only really having one bottle. Whereas you finished last season when you were training hard for 2 hours, you were having 3 bottles. You had 1 bottle every 40 minutes. You're 2 bottles behind right now. And it's not really a problem. And you won't know it's a problem until you start running into a place where your workout performance is dropping and you don't understand. Or every time you hit a convenience store, guilty, you eat a ton and you feel great for the end of your ride. You're just under fueling and putting yourself in a bad position. So one of the ways you can solve for this is actually having markers on your calendar, personal calendar, that sort of tell you like, hey, it's March. It's time to change the nutrition plan, right? Or reminders, right? I do reminders for my cycling equipment or my run equipment. I do the same for nutrition. Hey, it's September. Time to put this into place. Hey, it's November. Your season is ended, but let's be really smart about our nutrition so we maintain our body composition and set ourselves up for success. All of that really matters over time. All right. This has been fantastic. I want to thank everyone for joining and for tuning in. If you do have additional questions for me or anything you want to follow up with, you can always find me at enduranceNation.us. There's a chat bubble there. Those of you on the team obviously can message me inside the community. I'll be happy to help you out. But we do the season roadmap and the season plan for everyone on the team. And in fact, probably for a limited time only, I'm working on this behind the scenes. You'll be able to do your roadmap independent of being a member of the team. So you can purchase that roadmap, you can get a basic one, or you can go a little more all in and get more detailed. That allows you to map your season no matter what software you're using, no matter what your season strategy may look like. You can know going forward that you've got a season plan is designed, takes into account this mid-season slump and the other typical roadblocks that come up and detours. And we take those off the table for you so you can train and build towards your race without fear, knowing you can compound and accumulate your fitness in a way that's going to set you up for success for the year. Okay, again, thanks for tuning in. Coach Patrick from Endurance Nation. Hope to see you online or at the races. Awesome. Bye, everyone.